Sarah Bennett's hands trembled as she stared at Marcus's unlocked phone, her engagement ring, catching the late afternoon sunlight streaming through his home office window. She hadn't meant to snoop. She'd only grabbed his phone to check the rehearsal dinner details he promised to handle. But there it was, a group chat with his law firm colleagues, her whole life reduced to cruel punchlines and sneering emoticons. Can't believe I have to pretend to be proud of Sarah's big promotion tonight. Head teacher at a public elementary school, real impressive stuff. Marcus's message from 2 hours ago mocked. At least you'll have summers off to lose that stress weight, another lawyer chimed in. If she ever figures out how many zeros are in your salary, you're screwed, man. Sarah scrolled up, her vision blurring as she discovered months of similar messages. Every proud moment she'd shared with Marcus had been twisted into ammunition for his workplace entertainment. Her recent Teacher of the Year award, her volunteer work at the Children's Hospital, even the careful meal prep she'd been doing to get wedding ready, all of it ridiculed in excruciating detail. A soft knock at the office door made her jump. Sarah, Mom's asking about the seating chart. David Reynolds trailed off as he took in her tear-streaked face and his brother's phone clutched in her shaking hands. I can explain, Sarah started, but David was already crossing the room, his doctor's instinct to help kicking in. He crouched beside her chair, his kind face, so similar to Marcus's yet somehow gentler, creased with concern. What did he do this time? David asked quietly. This time? Sarah's heart clenched at the implication. David ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture so reminiscent of Marcus that Sarah had to look away. I've seen the way he talks about you at family functions when you're not around. I've tried to shut it down, but he gestured at the phone. I guess he just found a different audience. Sarah stared at the device in her hands, 6 years of memories rewinding through her mind like a movie playing in reverse. The subtle criticisms she'd brushed off as perfectionism, the backhanded compliments about her modest career goals, the way he'd started suggesting she skip family events because she wouldn't understand the conversations anyway. I thought I could help him change, she whispered, more to herself than to David. People only change when they want to, David replied, his voice heavy with what sounded like personal experience. And my brother, he thinks he's already perfect. The sounds of caterers setting up for tomorrow's rehearsal dinner drifted up from the garden below. Sarah could hear Marcus's mother directing the staff, her crisp voice carrying the same entitled edge her son had perfected. I can't marry him, Sarah realized aloud, the words bringing both terror and strange relief. No, David agreed softly. You can't. The children's ward at St. Mary's Hospital had been transformed. Fairy lights twinkled along the corridors, and paper flowers crafted by Sarah's students lined the walls. In the day room, now serving as their makeshift chapel, Tommy proudly adjusted his tiny tuxedo as head ring bearer. Ms. Bennett, he whispered, peeking into the nurse's break room where Sarah stood in her wedding dress. Dr. Dave's pacing again. Should I give him more magic medicine? Sarah laughed, touching up her lipstick. I think he's beyond strawberry milk today, buddy. She caught her reflection in the mirror, a simple white dress, her mother's pearl necklace, and a bouquet made of pages from children's books. Not the elaborate ceremony she'd once planned with Marcus, but somehow more perfect. The wedding march began, played on ukuleles by her 4th grade music class. When the elevator dinged, Marcus stumbled out, his tie askew and eyes glassy. I need to, he started, then stopped at the sight of her. God, Sarah. Security moved toward him, but Sarah held up her hand. It's okay. She turned to Tommy. Give us a minute. Once alone, Marcus leaned against the wall, running a hand through his disheveled hair. I came to give my blessing. Sounds stupid now that I'm here. You're drunk, Marcus. Had to be. Couldn't do this sober. He pulled out a creased envelope. Been in therapy. Doctor said I should write you a letter, but I couldn't send it. Everything I write sounds like excuses. Sarah took the envelope, noting the dozens of crossed-out attempts at her address. Why now? Because my perfect little brother is about to marry the woman I broke, and somehow that's the right ending. His voice cracked. The golden child finally beat me at something, and I can't even hate him for it, because he's exactly what you deserve. This isn't about winning, Marcus. No, he laughed bitterly. My whole life was about being the best. Best grades, best job, best fiancé. Then I lost you, and for the first time, I had to look at why I needed that perfection so badly. He straightened, trying to regain composure. Dad's impossible standards, Mom's social climbing. It messed me up. But that's not an excuse for how I treated you. The ukulele music swelled again. Sarah touched Marcus's arm gently. Get some help, Marcus. Really get it. Not for me, not for David, for yourself. He nodded, tears spilling over. You look beautiful, Sarah. Be happy, okay? She watched him stumble back to the elevator before slipping into the day room. David stood at their makeshift altar, surrounded by beeping monitors decorated with white bows. His face lit up at the sight of her, and any lingering doubts vanished. This was what love should look like, not perfect, but real. Not a performance for society, but a promise made among those who mattered most. Tommy gave her a thumbs up as she reached the altar, whispering loudly, "Don't worry, Miss Bennett. I gave Dr. Dave extra magic medicine. He's ready." The Reynolds family estate glittered under strings of elegant lighting, the engagement party in full swing as evening settled over the manicured gardens. Sarah stood at the edge of the crowd, her champagne untouched, watching Marcus hold court among his colleagues. He'd been drinking steadily since arriving, his lawyer's precise diction growing looser with each glass. Her phone felt heavy in her clutch, loaded with screenshots she'd taken of his messages before returning his phone. She planned to wait until tomorrow, to end things quietly and slip away with her dignity intact. But watching him now, the way he casually commanded the room's attention, she realized he'd spin the story however he wanted once she was gone. Everyone. Marcus clinked his glass, swaying slightly as he moved to the center of the gathered guests. I'd like to make a toast to my beautiful fiancé. Sarah's stomach clenched as his gaze found her. There was something mean in his smile, a gleam that reminded her of those cruel messages. You know, when you're as successful as I am, people expect you to marry someone. He paused, making a show of searching for the right word, equivalent. But I've always believed in seeing the potential in people, even if they never quite reach it. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Sarah saw David step forward from the corner where he'd been watching, his face darkening. Sarah here, Marcus continued, gesturing grandly in her direction. She's proof that settling for less can be its own kind of charity. I mean, she teaches kindergarten, for God's sake. But that's what I love about her. She's simple, uncomplicated, unlike the high-maintenance women I usually. Want to know what's really simple? Sarah's voice cut through the awkward silence, surprising even herself with its steadiness. She pulled out her phone as she walked toward him. These messages you sent about me. Let me share them with everyone, since you're so proud of your opinions. The color drained from Marcus's face as she began to read. With each message, the crowd's murmurs grew louder. She saw his mother press a hand to her mouth, his father's expression hardening into disappointment. Marcus's colleagues shifted uncomfortably, recognizing their own responses in the group chat. So yes, Marcus, Sarah concluded, her voice breaking slightly, I am simple. Simple enough to believe you actually loved me. Simple enough to think I could build a life with someone who saw me as a punchline. But I'm not simple enough to marry you. She dropped her engagement ring into his champagne glass with a soft plink and turned away, her legs shaking, but her spine straight. As she walked through the parting crowd, she heard David's voice behind her, I'll get her coat. She made it to her car before the tears started, fumbling with her keys until a warm hand covered hers. David stood there, holding out her jacket with understanding in his eyes. I've been waiting years for someone to stand up to him, he said quietly, helping her into her coat. Let me help you get your things before he realizes what's happening. Sarah looked back at the house, where she could see Marcus gesturing angrily through the windows. Why would you help me? Because, David said, opening her car door, someone finally needed to show him he's not perfect, and it might as well be the woman who deserves better than him. The Reynolds family estate loomed before David as he gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. Inside, His parents waited with what they called an opportunity, a prestigious position at Johns Hopkins, conveniently located across the country from Sarah. "It's time to think about your future," his mother had said over the phone. "There's a lovely neurosurgeon there I'd love you to meet." David drove past the gates without stopping. 20 minutes later, he stood in the doorway of Sarah's classroom, watching her arrange student artwork on the walls. The afternoon sun caught her hair, and he remembered how she'd felt in his arms during that backstage kiss 2 weeks ago. She turned at the sound of his footsteps. "David? Shouldn't you be at? Marry me?" Sarah froze, a child's painting of a butterfly suspended in her hands. "What?" "They want me to move to Baltimore," he said, crossing the room. "Start fresh," they said. "Meet someone more suitable." He took the painting from her trembling hands, setting it aside. "But I realized something driving over here. I don't want suitable. I want you." "David," Sarah stepped back, her voice shaking, "your family can either accept us or lose me." He caught her hands in his. "I spent my whole life being the good son, the one who never rocked the boat. But watching Marcus treat you the way he did, seeing our parents excuse his behavior, I'm done playing by their rules." Sarah pulled her hands away, wrapping her arms around herself. "The last time a Reynolds brother asked me to marry him, it didn't end well." "I know." David's voice softened. "That's why I'm not asking for an answer right now. Take 6 months. Watch how I handle the pressure, the family drama, your fears. Test me. Question me. Make sure I'm nothing like him. 6 months? I'll wait longer if you need." He reached into his pocket, pulling out not a ring, but a simple key. "But I want you to have this now. It's to my new apartment. The one I just leased instead of taking the Baltimore job. Whatever you decide, I'm not leaving you." Sarah stared at the key, tears welling in her eyes. "Your mother will never forgive you." "Maybe not," David agreed. "But I'll never forgive myself if I let them drive away the best thing that's ever happened to me." A sound at the classroom door made them both turn. Tommy stood there, his chemotherapy schedule clipboard in hand. "Dr. Dave," he asked hesitantly, "are you still doing my treatment tomorrow? My mom heard you were leaving." David knelt to the boy's level. "I'm not going anywhere, buddy. Promise." Sarah watched them, her heart tightening as David comforted her student. This was the man who'd waited in hospital rooms with her during Tommy's worst days, who'd organized a science fair for her homebound students, who looked at her like she hung the moon. The key felt warm in her palm as she closed her fingers around it. She might need 6 months to say yes to forever, but she already knew she wasn't giving the key back. In the savannah's twilight, Luna, a lone lioness, carried an extraordinary secret. Her cubs would be born with silver manes, a prophecy whispered by ancient gazelles. As stars painted the African sky, she felt them stir, 3 tiny hearts beating in rhythm with an ancient melody only she could hear. The annual Children's Hope Foundation benefit at St. Mary's Hospital hummed with activity. Backstage, Sarah adjusted the bow tie of Tommy, one of her 4th grade students who'd been battling leukemia. Around them, other children from her hospital education program practiced their lines for the presentation. "Remember," Sarah knelt to Tommy's level, "if you get nervous, just look at me in the audience." "I'm not nervous, Ms. Bennett." Tommy grinned, his pale face brightening. "Dr. Dave already gave me his special magic medicine." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Did he now?" "Yep." Tommy held up a small bottle of what appeared to be pink liquid. "He said it's his secret formula for brave kids." "Strawberry milk." David's voice came from behind them, making Sarah's heart skip. "Don't tell the other doctors my secret." He winked at Tommy, who giggled and ran off to join his friends. Sarah stood, smoothing her black cocktail dress. "You're good with them." "They make it easy," David shrugged, but his eyes were warm as he watched the children. "Unlike the board members I have to convince to fund your program." "About that," Sarah bit her lip. "Are you sure you want to introduce my speech? After what happened at the farmer's market last week? You mean when my mother accidentally ran into us and spent 20 minutes implying you were trying to work your way through all her sons?" David's jaw tightened. "That's exactly why I want to introduce you. Let them see what I see. Before Sarah could respond, they were called to places. She watched from the wings as David took the stage, his presence commanding the room full of donors and hospital staff. 2 years ago, our pediatric ward was like any other, he began. Until Sarah Bennett walked in and saw not just patients, but students. Children who deserved more than just medical treatment. They deserved a future to look forward to. Heat crept up Sarah's neck as David continued, his voice filled with unmistakable admiration. When he called her to the stage, their fingers brushed during the handoff of the microphone, sending electricity through her arm. Sarah delivered her speech with passion, sharing stories of students like Tommy, who refused to let illness define their education. As she described their achievements, she caught David watching her from the wings, his expression making her pulse race. The applause was thunderous when she finished. She barely made it backstage before David caught her arm, pulling her into the shadows behind a curtain. That was incredible, he breathed. You're incredible. Later, Sarah wouldn't remember who moved first, only the feeling of his lips on hers, gentle but urgent, his hands cupping her face like she was something precious. The flash of a camera barely registered. Until the next morning, when her phone exploded with notifications. The local paper's website featured the photo prominently. Reynolds' family drama. Jilted brothers' sweet revenge. The image captured their kiss perfectly. David's tender expression, Sarah's hands clutching his jacket, the obvious chemistry between them. Marcus's girlfriend dumped him publicly in the comments section. Now I understand why you're so obsessed with your ex. The wrong brother got the right girl. Sarah's phone buzzed again. A message from David. No regrets. You. She stared at the photo, at the happiness evident on both their faces, and typed back, not one. The banquet hall of Le Petit Bistro sparkled with champagne glasses and congratulatory smiles. Sarah's promotion to principal had drawn the city's educational elite, but she kept glancing at her phone, waiting for David to arrive from his emergency surgery. The youngest principal in the district's history, the superintendent was saying, and her innovative hospital education program is being adopted statewide. Sarah smiled politely, remembering how Marcus had once called her career adorably simple. The memory no longer stung, until she saw him walking through the door, sober and sharp in a tailored suit. Sarah. His voice was different, softer, lacking its old arrogant edge. Congratulations. The superintendent excused herself, leaving them alone in their bubble of awkward history. Marcus looked good, healthy in a way she'd never seen before. The haunted look from her wedding day had been replaced by something calmer. Thank you, she said carefully. I didn't expect. I've been waiting for the right moment, he interrupted. To show you something. He pulled out a leather-bound journal, its pages bristling with bookmarks. My therapist suggested I document my journey. It turned into a record of all my failures with you. Sarah's chest tightened as he opened it. Pages filled with his precise handwriting detailed every criticism, every mockery, every moment he'd chosen his ego over her heart. I was wrong, Marcus continued, his voice rough. About everything. Your career isn't simple, it's essential. Your kindness isn't weakness, it's strength. And letting you go was the biggest mistake of my life. He reached into his pocket, producing a small velvet box. Sarah's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a diamond ring that made her old engagement ring look modest. I know you're with David, he said quickly. But I had to show you who I've become. That I finally understand what I threw away. If there's any part of you that remembers what we had, what we could have again. Marcus. David's voice cut through the moment. He stood in the doorway, still in surgical scrubs, his face unreadable. Sarah looked between the brothers. Marcus with his practiced perfection and desperate eyes. David with his rumpled scrubs and unwavering love. In that instant, she saw her life split into two possible futures. With Marcus, she'd have wealth, status, and the satisfaction of a redemption story. With David, she had morning coffee and lesson plans, hospital rounds and quiet understanding, a love built on respect rather than renovation. She moved to David's side, taking his hand. Sorry you had to rush from surgery. Wouldn't miss it, he smiled, kissing her temple. Though I did have to promise Tommy an extra dose of magic medicine tomorrow. The simple intimacy of the moment, the shared joke about their favorite patient, the lingering scent of hospital soap, felt more valuable than any diamond. Marcus closed the ring box with a soft click. He never needed a script to say the right thing to you, did he? No, Sarah said gently. He just needed to be himself. 3 months after the engagement party, Sarah sat in her favorite corner of the Book Nook cafe, a stack of math worksheets spread across the table. She'd started coming here to avoid running into any Reynolds family members at her usual coffee spots. The quiet cafe, tucked between a vintage record store and a florist, had become her sanctuary, until today. I swear I'm not stalking you. David's voice made her jump, coffee sloshing over the rim of her cup. He quickly grabbed napkins from the nearby dispenser, though I'm doing a terrible job of proving that. Sarah couldn't help but smile as he helped clean up the spill. This is the third coincidental meeting this week, Dr. Reynolds. First the hospital, then the farmer's market, now here. The hospital wasn't a coincidence, he admitted, sliding into the chair across from her. I saw your name on the volunteer schedule for the children's ward, but the farmer's market actually was. I live right around the corner. Since when? Since Marcus started bringing his new girlfriend to our family dinners. Needed a change of scenery. He fiddled with a spare napkin, folding it into smaller and smaller squares. She's a junior partner at his firm. Very accomplished. Sarah felt an unexpected pang. Oh, that's good for him. Is it? David looked up, his eyes meeting hers. Because when I saw them together, all I could think was how wrong it looked. Not because of her, she's fine. But because she wasn't you. The air between them seemed to thicken. Sarah busied herself reorganizing her worksheets, very aware of his presence across the small table. I should go, she said finally. These papers won't grade themselves. Let me help, David offered quickly. I'm pretty good at 5th grade math. Might even learn something. Against her better judgment, Sarah found herself passing him half the stack. They worked in comfortable silence, broken occasionally by David's questions about her teaching methods or quiet laughter at students' creative answers. The afternoon light shifted through the cafe windows, casting a warm glow over their shared task. You know what I realized? David said as they finished the last worksheet. This is the first time I've seen you really smile since everything. I smile, Sarah protested. Not like this, he gestured at her face. Not reaching your eyes. It's nice to see. Sarah felt her cheeks warm. David. I know, he said quickly. It's too soon. It's complicated. I'm his brother. But Sarah. He hesitated, then reached across the table to touch her hand. What if that's exactly why it makes sense? I know who you really are. I saw how he treated you. And I would never. The cafe door chimed. They both looked up to see Marcus's girlfriend frozen in the doorway, her eyes wide with recognition. David pulled his hand back slowly. I should go. David, Sarah called as he stood. Same time tomorrow? His answering smile was worth whatever gossip was about to hit the Reynolds family group chat.